Killzone, the killer app of the PlayStation 2. The Halo Killer, a revolutionary shooter coming in 2004. And all things considered, it was pretty good. Kinda held back by the technology of its time, like Shadow of the Colossus and such. But it mostly delivered on its promises. The big issue was just the performance of it. And going back to it, I was curious about how it would play with improvements to frame rate and so on. Because PCSX2 does have improvements for Killzone. The game still doesn't run perfect, it has emulation issues, but there are some enhancements to remove the fog, to make it run better. It doesn't guarantee everything will be smooth, but it does make things a little better across the board. So is Killzone a better game at 60 frames per second? My answer is yeah. Overall, a lot of the issues that come from the game are either about the controls or about the frame rates. Those of you who have played this on an unmodded PS2 can testify that it really crawls in some places. Though, actually, it isn't all that bad in terms of gameplay, it's just the general flow of combat can be weird because of it. So I want to explore Killzone, the unique pace of it, the unique experience of it, and just overall what makes it tick. Because this was the killer app of the time, and it kind of delivered on its premise. Killzone 2 and even Killzone Liberation did better, but as a debut game it was pretty good.
My people, sons and daughters of Helghan, for many years we have been a broken nation, shunned, oppressed. Die! Die!
So, most of you know the story of Killzone. The Helghast are total badasses, they look so cool, and one day they invade Vecta for revenge for being exiled from that planet. The ISA, being notorious villains, fight back, but a heroic defector inside the ISA gives the Helghast the insider info they need to launch their invasion. And it's up to you and a few dastardly ISA troopers to wipe out the heroic Helghast retaking their planet. The main draw of the campaign is that as it progresses, you get more playable character options. You start out with Yan Templar, who is your no-nonsense FPS protagonist with decent health regeneration and a standard arsenal. The next section of the campaign, you get Shadow Marshal Luger, who has options for stealth, including a silenced weapon with an alternate one-hit kill fire. Then you get Rico, who is the tank of the group with this chainsaw mount-like weapon. It reminds me of the chainsaw from COD Ghosts, if you remember that. Heavy rate of fire, heavy damage, very good, has a grenade launcher attachment. You also get Colonel Haka, a Helghast defector who is working for the ISA. He's similar to Templar, except he can access certain areas that Helghast are only able to. The campaign is pretty lengthy, pretty good. Something that I did not expect from it, and I'd say one of the highlights that makes Killzone stand out, is that the combat is deliberately slow-paced. It reminds me of how certain aspects of Donkey Kong 64 were made around the slow frame rate it would have at times. So combat takes its time. Even fighting a few enemies can feel intense. It takes a while to clear enemies out. It feels like you're fighting guys who are wearing pretty strong combat armor. The Helghast aren't necessarily bullet sponges, like your shots will stagger them, wound them, it'll make them reconsider fighting you or take cover, but it isn't just like you fire off one shot and they're dead, unless you have like an explosive or a sniper rifle or you land a shot with Luger's weapon and stealth. These guys put up a serious fight, even a few of them can make quick work of you if you aren't careful. You have to approach every gunfight cautiously. It rewards you for pacing yourself, and it also helps that the guns are either inaccurate or they kick hard for the most part. Also leading into that is the fact that the controls can be kinda iffy. I found that the analog stick sensitivity made pulling off shots tricky, so it was complicated landing certain shots, which also carried on firefights longer. But it's a positive though. I think that was what surprised me. Once I realized the intended pace of combat, I enjoyed it a lot more. And sure, at 60 frames per second it does move along quicker, the times I could get to run 60 frames per second, but more on that later. But it was fun. Slow-paced combat isn't something you normally see unless it's like Arma, where you have to hike a country mile just to get sniped by someone, and then you have to replay the same mission half an hour just to get to that point again. This is more of like a controlled linear experience that is also slow-paced. I think a good comparison would be Easy Red 2 in that regard. In that both games are story-based, action-based, they have campaigns with set objectives, but the pace of a firefight can be slow. It can take time to clear enemies out of positions. It's easy to dig in and hold ground as a defender, and as an attacker you have to consider all angles and plan things carefully when fighting them. The Helghast are pretty smart. I mean, I'd say there are some nerfs thrown their way in order to make sure they don't just snipe you every chance they get. They can make some dumb moves, they can stand out in the open, but generally they're competent opponents. They put up a good fight, and if you make too many mistakes, they will shred you. I liked the enemy variety in general, because you are just starting out fighting regular Helghast. Then heavy ones come along who can soak up more ammo. You can recognize them by the bald, goggled look they have. There are these jet bikes that will fly by and shoot at you. There's a really cool set piece where the Helghast are storming a beach. You have to use these different defenses to fight them off, including some armored vehicles you have to use explosives to take down. This isn't like Time Splitters, where it has a crazy amount of enemy variety. This is your typical FPS war shooter variety, and that's okay. It isn't revolutionizing anything, but the enemies stand out. You're not being confused as to whether you're fighting like a sniper or a regular enemy. Those encounters are distinct. And the player characters, as I touched on before, are fun and unique. I'll say Rico can kind of break up the pacing in a way that probably wasn't intended. Haka, Luger, and Templar all lean into the slower angle of combat. Rico is a tank. He completely subverts the intended pace by having this machine gun that just tears through Helghast as an underbarrel grenade launcher for even more destruction. Sure, it can overheat, but if you pace your shots correctly, you can effectively flatten most opposition. That's what makes it so much fun, honestly. Rico is great if you just want a power fantasy going on. He has more health, more ammo, he just shreds enemies. He is fun if you like a traditional shooter of the era. If you like the slower, methodical approach, then the other player characters work fine. Haka is more or less just Templar with some alternate routes available, and Luger plays in her own way. Now, the performance aspect I touched on. Even with the enhancements of the emulator, this game struggles to run effectively at 60 frames per second. I found oftentimes it would dip down to 30, and there were times it would just freeze, and I'd have to wait like 5 or 10 seconds for the game to get back up and running again. Part of the problem is that Killzone demands a lot of hardware that isn't really meant for these big open war set pieces that were made for it. Sure, Guerrilla Games optimized Killzone for that sort of experience. They didn't throw a ton at you at once, but it still asks a lot of aging hardware, and it shows. The emulator can only do so much to compensate. Another problem is that the game itself isn't exactly the most optimally made. This isn't like Time Splitters 2, where FreeRadical designed an insane amount to curb assets and keep the game running at 60 frames per second. Where it's like, even when you leave a room, the other room is immediately unloaded, and in order to compensate for resources lost, there are all these tricks pulled with different levels and what's being loaded and what isn't. This was their debut game, and it doesn't seem like they had as much experience with getting it to run smoothly. So it's admittedly unoptimized. But, I mean, it is what it is. Killzone has the reputation it has for kind of coming out at the wrong time. Maybe if it had launched on the PS3, it would have run better. But, I mean, Shadow of the Colossus was also a slow game, and that I also love. So, sometimes it's just coming to terms with the fact that a game is going to run slower, making peace with that. In addition to the campaign, Killzone comes with multiplayer modes. I had known about that, but I figured they were only for online. I was surprised to find they also had offline options. which included bots and different modes, different maps. It was a surprising amount of thought put into it, and I actually had fun with it. I always love games with bot matches and bot support, and it was cool to experience the multiplayer modes of Killzone without hopping onto a dead online server. Plus, to top it off, there's the war footage option, where it'll load up a bot match between the Helghast and the ISA, and you'll just watch it play out, like you're witnessing footage of the ongoing conflict on Vecta. It's a neat little feature. I mean, it doesn't contribute anything at the end of the day to like the story or whatever, but it's cool to imagine it as like a documentary of the war between the ISA and Helghast. Overall, I mean, Killzone in some ways hasn't aged the best. I think if you struggle with console shooter controls, you'll find this frustrating, though there's probably a mouse injector by now. If you don't have a top-of-the-line PC, you'll probably struggle to run this. And even if you do, I think Killzone still is going to have issues. It definitely needed a better launch platform. Maybe if it was a PC game or something, it could have run better. As blasphemous as it sounds, maybe this would have been better on Xbox, but hey, it came out on PS2 when it left the legacy it did. Plus, Killzone 2 more than made up for whatever shortcomings the first one had. Honestly, I like it. I could squabble about some of the weapon designs and such, but honestly, aside from a few underpowered options like the Helghast pistol, I liked the guns, I liked the characters, and I like the overall pace and tempo of the story. Killzone is not a perfect game, it's not a perfect FPS, it's not a perfect war game, but it's good. It had a unique concept, it had a lot of heart, it tried its best, and it might not have succeeded everywhere, but it did leave a good impact. It led people to try out more of the franchise, which led to other games coming out. I'd say it succeeded. And honestly, it's a cool game that I'd recommend visiting sometime. Just keep in mind that it's slower paced, and even if you emulate it, you're probably going to have problems running it. It's a price to pay, and honestly, this needs a remake. This, above all else, this is one of those games that actually needs a remake. Halo was fine. It didn't need campaign evolved. This does, because this was held back by the limitations of the time. I don't know, I would like to see it happen. Like, enough Horizon stuff. Just make a remake of the first Killzone. Because the second and third and Liberation and Mercenary worked fine on their platforms. This one was the one that had issues. And it would actually benefit from a remake because the original engine, as I understand, was also a first attempt by Guerrilla Games. I don't know, what do you think? Would you guys want a remake of Killzone or just a port? Would you guys think it'll end up on PC at some point? I kinda hope it does. Maybe on Xbox. I mean, I think the console wars died down enough that we can get away with that. I just want this on a better platform, because I think it has really good potential. I think the slow pace could still work in a 60 frames per second consistent setting. Thank you all for watching, take care.